Hey, do the Ranom me. My name is Tim. You can call me Coach, Nalo, whatever you like, and I'll be reviewing the game today. Now, before we go into the game itself, let's talk about two things. The first one is what is our plan in laning phase, and the second one is how do we plan to win the game. Now, in terms of the lane, we see we're Urgot against Chogath. Now, this matchup is actually pretty simple for Urgot. You always have the all-in pressure versus the Chogath, especially if he goes like some random, Q max or something. Now, if he goes AP, of course, he's going to be able to clear waves. So it's just about exchange waves while you have pressure. While if he goes the tank build, then you're going to basically shred him down very, very easily. Now, in the matchup itself, no issues whatsoever. The only thing we just have to pay attention to is that you can, like, if you predict that he's going to use like his W, you can like E before it so that you don't get silenced or the silence lasts through your animation of your E, right? But other than that, there's no real other interactions between you. It's just after you throw him all out of the shoulder, you go around and you mess him up with your damage, right? Now, the next thing we want to look at is how do we plan to win the game. Now here, what happens is we want to look at how Urgot works against the enemy team. So, against Chogath, we already discussed, we're very, very good. At some point, we're going to be able to just, ignore him, take damage on the towers, right? So pretty simple. And Ignite is, if we abuse early, which we should, in early and mid game, we're going to have a lot of kill pressure on him. Now, of course, after he builds like 3-4 items, he just becomes too tanky, But, overall, we are really good. And even in team fights, Urgot is actually really good against, tanks like Chogath, because if we like ult him and your team bursts him down and then, the big fear pops off, is really, really good. Then we have Warwick. We're really good against him as well. We see that the trend is gonna go everything that is very close range and we can land the ultimate on is gonna be easy for us to deal with, right? So Warwick, same thing as Cho. Then Yasuo. The only thing about Yasuo is that if he gets ahead, he can actually beat us 1-1 really easily because he can, dodge everything we throw at him. So if we don't land the E, we will not win, right? So basically, we need to catch him when, minions are on cooldown for his E, or we kind of have to land E from the bush to one-shot him. But if we land E, he gets one-shotted. And it's really, really crucial to wait out his wind wall, right? So by waiting out his wind wall, he can't wind wall our ultimate, right? So that's really, really key. Now, Kai'Sa, depends on what she builds. Kai'Sa is usually really, really good against Urgot. The only way to get on top of it is if you flashy, right? What happens is that usually that's not going to be the case. So, Kai'Sa doesn't really matter much for you because you're always going to go front to back with Urgot. You're never going to really die at the backline with how immobile Urgot is. So that's why, Kai'Sa is kind of like a non-relevant factor here. And then Zilean, we hate Zilean. Really, really difficult. Like, he counters our ultimate, right? So we always, if we join teamfights, have to wait out the Zilean ultimate out before we go in, right? So the Zilean ultimate, the Yasuo W is going to be key here to wait out before we commit to a fight itself. But on side lane, we beat everyone as long as we are still ahead over the Yasuo, right? And then, versus Yasuo, if he goes on side lane against us, we have to use the bushes to set up a shoulder throw, and then he gets one-shotted. So, now let's go into the game itself. The first situation is going to happen at 3 minutes and 37. So here what happens is we're going to give a leash to Lee Sin. And what you're doing is by going around, like trying to go around the red buff, and to give a maximum leash is really, really bad for Urgot. And the reason for it is because it gives an insanely good leash, but it wastes a lot of time for you, right? So when you're leashing, right, you never want to, do that except if you do a trick where you stand here when it spawns, and then you do the circle at the beginning, right? And then you go. So basically what you want to do is you want to buy 135, right? Start walking out. Usually we can do about 3 to 4 auto attacks in the ability, and then we want to go, boom. And the reason for it is if we're too late, we might lose minions on the wave itself. So in general, at 135, start walking away, right? Focus on your lane. Stop thinking about, does Lee Sin get 2 more auto attacks? Doesn't matter too much for your elo, right? So focus on being on lane on time to maximize what you can do rather than, helping your jungler. Then we have the next one at 2 minutes 55. Here what happens is we're gonna see that Chogath is pushing into us, right? And based on how the junglers are gonna path, so Warwick started bot side, Lee Sin started top side, right? Means that we want to have the wave close to our tower. So what you're doing is good, right? But here we're gonna see that the wave started to equalize, right? And what we did, like for example, for this auto attack, right? For this auto attack, right? What we're doing is we're basically doing AoE damage to the wave. So we're basically enabling the Cho to say, well, the wave should come back to me. Now, of course, he's bad and he's constantly hitting the wave with his spells and pushing it in, right? But if he did that, then the wave would push to you. Warwick would be able to at 3, 15, 20, be top lane, and then you would get ganked, right? Now, of course, they don't really have that much kill pressure on you because they're pretty weak champions, but you can potentially die if you misplayed. So that's why when you're like freezing or holding the wave in front of your tower as Urgot, you always want to pay attention to your stacks, right? That do AoE damage, so that you hit the minions in a way that you only hit one. Or just use your, you don't have the Q here right now, but you can use your Q on one minion, to hit it, right? So it's really important to keep the ratio up. So when, your jungler's pathing bot side, enemy jungler's pathing top side, you don't mess with the wave so it potentially goes into the enemy, okay? Then we have the next one at 5 minutes, 10 seconds. Here what happens is we've been, in the lane for a pretty long time. Chogath bases, right? And what we do is we keep staying on the lane. So we let Chogath, TP back, break the freeze, hit into tower. Awesome, right? But now what we have to do is instead of kind of like just last sitting and wanting to extend the laning phase, we need to understand here the difference between Ignite and TP. So with Ignite, what we want to do is we want to have kill pressure onto the enemy, right? But our base timings are much worse because we can't just use TP back on the lane, right? Which means that when the enemy laner like Chogath based and got an item advantage over us, even though it's not as big like a cloth armor and boots don't do shit, especially armor early on is really weak and boots of course useless piece of shit. So it's not that big of a deal, which means what you want to do now is you want to set yourself properly up for level 6 or push and base, right? And then because you stayed longer, you're gonna have a bigger buy, which means you're gonna come back to the wave with more items, right? Which means that here you actually need to start defending the wave, right, from Chogath, and any trade you take is actually good for you. Why? Because based on the fact you stayed longer, you're gonna hit level 6 first. Level 6 power spike with Ignite is insane with Urgot, right? And secondary, when we want a base here, which means if we take any trades, what happens is we're gonna base anyway after we crash the wave, which means that Chogath is gonna stay with that amount of HP or mana on the lane, right? So here you wanna start protecting this wave, hitting it hard, starting to fast push so that you can either all in him on the next wave when you hit level 6, or Chogath would acknowledge that, let you push the wave in, right, and then base. Now, of course, if Warwick comes at that point, at level 6 in Ignite Power Spike, as long as we save all our ability for Warwick, we can actually one-shot him, So we are not really scared about getting ganked in this point. So in general, right, when the enemy top laner goes back and you have to stay, you need to prepare yourself that after the freeze, we've pushed the wave in with the extra experience so we can set ourselves up for a good base timing into an item advantage. Then we have the next one at 6 minutes, 52. 5 minutes, 52. Here what happens, we're going to talk about a proper Urgot combo, right? So here we can see we're going to hit level 6. Okay, awesome. So here we are acknowledging that we're level 6, we have Ignite, we can one-shot this guy, right? Very, very easily. Now the only thing is how to do it. So here we're gonna see the Chogath silences you. So now he used basically all his spells, right? We go on top of him, which is awesome. And then we use our E, great. And then here, we need to combine our E with our ultimate. So here you're going to see that you're going to keep auto-attacking. But what you should actually do is during the time when he's like knocked up and stunned, right, when he lands, what happens is we actually can land the ultimate, and he cannot dodge it because he can't flash away, right? So by throwing the ultimate here, you then slow him down, which sets him up for you to go around them with the ignite, right, and finish him off. So it's really, really key that we combine the E into ultimate combo to secure ourselves skills like this for free, instead of like doing the damage and then, throwing the ultimate randomly that he can flash out, or, dodge in this case. So it's really important that we E ultimate, right, because he cannot dodge it that way. And even if he would, let's say, flash away, if we timed it improper, right, we wouldn't really commit anything, like we lost the ultimate and he lost the flash, which means that on the next fight we can very easily one-shot him. So in general, E-ult to minimize your animation time on ultimate and land it during the time when a person is stunned. And you set yourself, for the slow as well for afterwards the AoE damage. Then we have the next one, 6 minutes, 37. Here what happens is a very, very simple thing. We traded with Chogath, we see the wave is bad for us, and what do? We start going to the wave to fix it, And here in situations like this, you run an item disadvantage, he's already based with TP, right? We don't have ult, we don't have ignite, we don't have any kill pressure. Don't stay base. Very, very simple. Sometimes we're going to be in late state that we don't want to be, we're going to lose some experience and gold, but don't try to force and die for it, right? Just base, spend the gold, come back, and that's how you're going to minimize the risk, right? We talked about situations before that would prevent the situation from occurring, but when it does occur, don't be greedy and try to fix everything, right? Sometimes we have to sacrifice something in a bad situation. Then we have the next one at 8 minutes, 45. Here what happens is going to be a very, very simple kill situation. So here, we land a slow on Cho. Cho used the W, right? And then what we can do here is just E the Cho, right? Ult him, and because he has no flash, he should have actually just died from us, right? So basically, whenever you have the opportunity, when the enemy's abilities are on cooldown, and he just walks into your face like this, especially a Cho that is like a mana user, just all in him, and even if he would survive, right? Let's say he would survive for some goddamn reason, he would be right? And then you can fuck him up after, right? So that was just a kill situation where we have to acknowledge like the combo E into ultimate, into circle damage, into kill, right? So that we can start winning these lanes much harder in the early game and snowball our advantage. And then the next one is 11 minutes, 45. Here what happens is we push the wave. And then we see that Chogath is miss on the map, but we have a shit ton of gold. We have 1k, which is a lot, right? So what we want to do here is, because we don't see Chogath, right? What we want to do is we want to actually base, buy the items, and come back on the map. The reason why we don't want to push this tower is because what can happen is Chogath can come, he can delay your base, and then, based on the fact the new minion wave comes, he can actually take a plate or two back from you. So a lot of people, what they do is they overstay like this. They take a plate, they be like, yes, awesome, I got a plate. But then the enemy takes a plate or two back, and it's like, I'm much, much stronger than Chogath right now, right? When it comes to like champion, power spike. And now I will stay and give him a free plate. Not good. Right? You always want to keep up the tempo and snowball your advantage rather than overstay for 160 gold and Chogath stops you and then gets the same amount of gold back. Because if you guys equally scale, then Chogath is kind of winning out on top a little bit. Why? Well, because he has TP for mid and late game, which he can use to join fights. So in general, don't overstay for plates. Tempo is more important. Then we're going to go into mid and late game. But before that, to sum it up, right, we said faster leash, properly just last hit, don't hit many minions to let the wave push in when enemy jungler is pathing top, your jungler is pathing bot. Force the push into base or force the fight when we're close to level 6, right, with ignite. Proper combo, E into ultimate, right, so the landing ultimate during the time when they're stunned, knocked up. Then properly base, don't greed if we're in bad position. we show the kill situation, and lastly, like we said, don't greed for plates, base, spend the gold, come back on the map. Now, 15-10, mid and late game situations. First one, really simple. We push top, right? We see there's no pressure on the map, we start basing. Awesome. What do? We cancel the base and then go for the Chogath, right? Why is that bad? Right now, as you see, everything's dark. So when we're split pushing, we need to understand that the only way for Chogath to kill us is with the team, right? So what should we do? You know, when we're split pushing, properly base, right? When you don't see anybody else in the map. So think like this. Just every time you want to kill him, look at the map. 3-4 people miss. I don't. Step back. Wait, right? I see 3 people pushing mid or 4 people pushing bot. Awesome. I kill him, right? So very, very quick glance so that we don't go in and, you know, give kills to the enemy team, right? So in general, like we said, take a look at the map. If you don't see people, step back. If you see people, kill the guy. Then we have the next one. 16 minutes. 15. It's going to be 35. Okay, so here we go bot, right? We push out the wave. Awesome. Then what do? We start roaming mid. And here we need to understand that you itemized into Hullbreaker, right? When we itemize into Hullbreaker, we don't want to join these early fights. Why? Because the item effectiveness becomes way, way lower. What we want to do is a little bit of a trick. What we want to do is we want to let our team fight, push bot, pay attention to what the enemy team used, and then when they use their crucial ultimate, summon their spells for that, when they come bot and like, we're gonna stop Urgot, then we fuck them up, right? With the extra resistances and ultimate advantage, right? So it's really, really key. We don't join early fights like this with Urgot. Why? Well, we minimize the effectiveness of the item, right? So stay on bot, keep pushing, take the tower here, push the next wave. If you meet anyone right now, we can one-shot him after, you know, ultimate comes back up in 5 seconds, right? And let's play around that rather than, you know, group with our team. Then we have the next one at 18 minutes. Here we're gonna just maximize resources. So here what happens is we pushed out bot wave, right? And we see 2 people mid. Okay, so we don't see anyone yet, so we can't really keep pushing bot because Chogath can come, or we can like pop W and start running, right? And it can be a little bit annoying. So instead, what we should do in situations like this is utilize Fog of War. So here we would go Crux into red, right? Wait for people to show, and let's say 5 people show here, then we would fully commit to a push, right? So it's really important that after you push out, if we don't see people, go Fog of War, take jungle camps, right? And wait for people to show. And when they do show, same thing as with Chogath on top, then you fuck things up on bot lane, okay? Then we have the next one, 1950. Here, we're going to talk about the rotation. So here we see that we're going mid into Drake, right? So at this point in time in the game, we're really strong. We have Titanic Hydra, we're Hullbreaker, we're already building into our 3rd item, right? So we're really strong. And what we're doing here is we're running towards a 2nd Drake when one of our members is dead. Horrible decision. Why? Because Drakes are worth a useless piece of shit, okay? The only Drakes that are worth are Soul, Elder. Anything else, ignore. Okay, especially when you're like Hullbreaker, Ignite, you know, 1v1 champion, right? Like Urgot's really strong. Go on side, go top here, push top. If the enemy fights, you take towers, you take jungle, right? And then when after the fight, you pay attention how much they used, and then you kill them, right? So it's really important we don't go for fights like this because again, we're minimizing the item. We're minimizing, we're losing CS on top, we're losing pressure top, and we're going into a 5v5 variable fight, which is much easier for us to lose because right now, based on items, we shit on anybody, right? So we have to put ourselves in position to maximize that effect. Then, 23, 45. Here what happens is we get a great kill top on Cho. Push the wave. Awesome. Now, what we're doing is we're doing the mistake of staying with team. So, why is that a problem? The problem is that right now we have Baron, right? Which means that if we can buff many waves, what happens is we get way more pressure, right? So instead of staying with your team here, what we should do is we should go mid, take the wave, and then rotate to bot because we can see the inhibitor is going to spawn soon because your super minions stopped spawning, right? So we would rotate away from our team. Why? One, again, maximize Hullbreaker. Two, we would maximize our golden experience that we get from the waves. And three, we would buff more waves with Baron so that we would create more pressure. And if our team would get engaged on top, we would take bot, right? Or mid, depending on where the enemies are, right? So, and if our team just dies and we can't, then we at least picked up like one wave mid, two waves bot, and then based with more golden experience, right? So it's really key that we, if we get a kill and our team goes there, I know it looks weird and when you go away, but that's what you want to do with the Hullbreaker, Ignite Urgot, right? You only want to join like team fights around objectives that are actually really crucial for you. If you can be away from your team, it's much better because like we said, our 1v1 potential rather than trying to fight a 5v5, right? Which adds more variables. Then 25-20. Here, really simple situation. We're level 15, right? We're in a bush, awesome. Then what happens is Yasuo comes, and what we do is we see this fight here and we go towards it. Don't ever do that, right? Here we have the option of one, go into a fight where there's a zillion ult, right? Where one of our members is already dead, right? Or what we can do is we can just go and fuck this Yasuo up, So what should we do? Destroy the Yasuo, right? And now if we kill the Yasuo and enemies use a lot of cooldowns again for our team, we can potentially then go to the fight later, But what is the key here? The key here is you're thinking that you want to be the frontline for your team, which is fine. You can be a Urgot, The champion is really strong to fight front to back in team fights. But the thing is that you can't really do that if your carries are already dead, right? So the more people are around you and if your carries are dead, you're not really going to do much because more people are just going to focus you, right? So in those kind of situations, pick the isolated one-on-ones, and after you win them, then you can look to impact the team fights. And lastly, at 31 minutes and 30 seconds, okay? So here, we're going to look at the last trick in terms of split pushing that you can use and you should be using in your games. So here we can see that Kai'Sa is pushing bot, right? And what we do is we just walk, into like a bush here, right? And here, what we want to do is instead of walking into a bush here, right? What we want to do is we want to utilize bushes to catch people closer. This one, or this one, right? But we need to kind of like predict Kai'Sa. So Kai'Sa, based on the fact here, can push one more wave in, right? But if she pushes this one, she's not really going to go for more, right? Because it's going to be past the mid lane point. So if you want to set up these catches, don't utilize bushes like this, right? You want to utilize bushes like here on the crux, or if you're on the opposite side, right? The tri-bush here, right? And the lane bushes, right? So that you can then just go Fog of War. Now you see the enemies, and now we can set ourselves up. So it's like you have the right idea, it's just the wrong bush execution, basically, right? To basically surprise people, make a pick, and then capitalize on the pick, right? So overall in mid and late game, we talked about maximize our base timings, right? And look at the map before you want to kill someone. So if they're invisible, like if you don't see enemies, don't go and then die for no reason. Then we talked about maximizing our split push, punishing it by taking more jungle camps in the situations we saw and waiting for people to show up before hard pushing the waves. Then we saw how to not tunnel vision on Drake and randomly give up, shutdowns and minimize our Hullbreaker and, minimize our chances of winning fights because we're going into a 5v5, which is harder to win than a 1v1 for us, right? Then we discuss how to take the isolated fight rather than, front to back team fight if your carries are already dead, right? And lastly, utilize the bushes properly so that, you can kind of like you need to predict based on where the waves hit. That's where you wanna set yourself up. So if the waves would hit here, then this plan is really good, right? So it's basically utilize the bush next on the wave crash, like where they meet, and there you're gonna be able to set up a kill or a surprise kill much easier. So do the Ranomi. It was really nice to review your game. If you want to drop down a comment or review, I'll be very happy to read it. Other than that, Coach Nalu out.